The mic was muted. I know, I do this, okay? Because I don't be wanting to do a test, and that's the problem. It's a lesson in that. We'll talk about it later. Honestly, I'm glad I'm re-recording it because since then I have lived this message. You hear me? I was already living it, and then I thought it up and thought about it. I wrote about it, and I've had conversations about it since then. And I've been able to sit with it a little bit more with myself. And I realized something important that I don't think I was ready to name out loud the first time. This episode needed a little bit more oomph in it, okay? Hey y'all, welcome to the Brown Heart Wellness Podcast. I'm Samantha Edu, and this season is about bravery, capacity, and learning more about the self in community. Not the kind that looks impressive, feels good, overflowing all the time, the kind that keeps you intact. If you've been following along on Substack or social, you already know that this episode has been building up. This conversation didn't start here today. It has been unfolding for a minute. So, if you've been following along on Substack or my socials, you already know that this episode has been building up. So, what you're going to see is me posting on my Substack. You will see my socials, and then you'll see the episode of our podcast coming out. So, you'll be ready for the conversation. Okay, that by that time you will all have by that time you will have already. Mm-mm. If you've been following along on Substack or my socials, you already know the episode has been building up to this moment, okay? And this is how you're going to see the format of season 3 of the Brown Heart Wellness podcast. Oh, I forgot to tell y'all, Happy New Year. This is the first episode of 2026. Let's get into it. Some things we are not changing, okay? We start every episode with a Brown Heart affirmation. Here's your affirmation today. I am allowed to change shape without losing my value. My capacity can shift without my strength disappearing. I want to give a little context, especially if you didn't start the year with me on Substack. So, Substack is a especially if you didn't start the year with me on Substack. So, Substack is a writing platform where I write things, and you'll see me writing more this year. And I will start out by writing on Substack and then doing the episode. So, my word for 2025 was vessel. I started that year picturing myself as this big, strong, sturdy vessel, this big, strong vase, capable, thick, grounded, holding a lot, able to pour out a lot. And by the end of the year, I felt like a teacup, right? I want to re say that. So, my word for the year for 2025 was vessel. Oh my gosh, that word rocked me back and forth. You hear me? I started that year picturing myself as this big, strong, sturdy vase, something big, giant, hold a lot. You can put a lot of things in it, just like this one, capable, able to pour out a lot, can be poured into a lot. And by the end of the year, I felt like this tiny little teacup, you know, tiny, just super cute, still capable, still sturdy, kind of. Don't drop it. um, but I same purpose, but very different capacity. Here's the part that really matters in our conversation. I was not a teacup because I was weak. We should naturally be able to shapeshift in and out of our capacity and bandwidth based on what's going in our we should naturally be able to shapeshift in and out of capacity and bandwidth based on what's going in our lives, what's going on. Freak. We should naturally be able to shapeshift in and out of capacity and bandwidth based on what's going on in our lives. Like that's normal, that's human. That's what we should be able to allow ourselves to do. What was hard wasn't being or acknowledging that the teacup, the bandwidth of this teacup existed. What was hard was having the capacity of a teacup while still trying to produce the outcomes of the vase. That is what was hard. That is what still remains to be hard. The mismatch, that is where the stress lives. That's where the exhaustion lives. That's where the burnout lives. That is where I started to doubt myself. That is where self-trust started to crumble. And I want us to talk about what it looks like when your capacity shifts and your self-trust starts to shift with it, because the outcome is not quite matching the vase, the vessel, right? I had to learn that a teacup is not lesser, it's just different. It holds warmth. It's you have to be more intentional with what you're putting in it, what you're pouring out of it. It requires care. You know, a teacup does its job beautifully. Y'all know I love me some tea, okay? I'm very mindful about the tea I choose to drink. I have a mindful morning ritual with my teas in the morning, you know. But the thing about a vase is it just holds more. It's sturdy. This was meant to be seen. If I put this in a room, you're going to see it. I'm holding up this big giant vase full of flowers, and it's clear. You can see what it looks like, but neither of them is better than the other, but they're just not interchangeable, right? And when we pretend that they are interchangeable, that's when we get hurt. That's when we're stressed. That's when we're tired. That's when we don't know how to show up for ourselves. And we're still showing up for others because they still expect us to be this base, but this is where we are, you know? Recently, this is a very okay. So, this happened after I wrote the Substack post. Recently, I interviewed with this company for a full-time clinician role. So, for those of you who don't know, I've been a clinician for about 15 years, and I have been in various roles, clinician roles, but I've been in clinical leadership for about the last 10 of those years. And I have spent some time in hospitals, community mental health, all sorts of things, right? On paper, I was overqualified. You know, leadership experience, many years in the field, all of the things. But for this season of my life, I knew exactly what I was applying for. But the woman interviewing me was very condescending. At one point, she asked, like, I see you've been in leadership, but have you actually done the work? You know what I'm saying? Like, girl, don't, don't do that. You know, she also shared that clinicians there are expected to see 35 clients a week. The conversation itself was just harmful, right? Very unprofessional, very harmful. And it was really like it really hurt me to think about all of the people who are in these transition periods, right? And they are in different states of mind as it relates to their own capacity and how they are defining their own worth as it relates to their capacity. And then you get on the phone with someone like this, and that has the possibility of making you feel much smaller, and not smaller in terms of being aware of your teacup status and knowing that this is still worthy. There's so much value in this, but smaller as in you haven't gotten to the stage where you're able to see the value in this. And you have a conversation with someone like that, and they don't realize that you are a giant, right? So when someone assumes you are a fragile teacup because you are in transition, they might sometimes take advantage of that. They get rude, they get dismissive. They might test the boundaries just to see what's going to happen. But what they don't realize is even when I have had the capacity of a teacup, a giant has always been laying dormant on the inside of me, right? And in that conversation, the giant rose up, not loud, not aggressive, but present, very present. And that moment was so encouraging for me, right? Before, when I started to think about the vase and I started to think about the teacup, It was already encouraging because I was acknowledging the value when our capacity, it is symbolized by the teacup, right? And I think that there's strength in that, right? But we had I had stopped there. Had given some time and these conversations that I've been having, now I've gotten to, wow, there's strength, there's value, but also it is so important to remember, just because the teacup exists, honey, it doesn't mean that that giant is not still in there. It's just resting, laying quietly, waiting for the moment when you shapeshift into the vase, into when you shapeshift back into the vase, right? When that time and that season returns for you to shapeshift. But this season hasn't called for that. But never, ever, ever, ever forget that the giant is still there. And I think that that moment just was a great reminder for me. Sometimes you don't need to use all your strength. Like, I don't need to walk around with all my strength around me, right? I just need to remember that it's there. That's it. That is the additional work, is remembering that the strength is there, right? Even though my capacity is a teacup, right? And I'm feeling the intentionality needed to um be this vessel. And I'm also feeling the fragility that can come with this type of vessel. um I also know that there is a giant laying dormant within me, and there are times when it will awaken because it's natural. It's me. It's not a separate person. There's not some external entity that has control like puppet strings over the giant, right? It's me. And I felt so empowered. My teacup, I still felt like that teacup in that moment. Like, I felt like that had just filled my teacup to the brim, honey. I was overflowing, one, with frustration. Not what I want in my teacup at. I'm not gonna lie now. The teacup was filled with some festivity in the moment, because I don't like when people are treating other people wrong, and the idea that this person is the front door of this organization to other people who might be seeking something, who might not be at the place that I am now, but maybe at the place I was a while ago. It is frustrating to me. But knowing that that giant laying dormant within me rose when it needed to rise, as it always has, gave me so much energy to say, wow, what's needed right now is your consistency and your trying. You're continuing to show up for yourself, regard no matter what it looks like, as this vessel. I don't need to keep trying to show up for myself as this vessel, as the vase, right? Because that season is gone. The cognitive dissonance, the dissonance between two things, right? The distance between two things um that creates confusion or friction, is when you are trying, for me, it's when trying to be this big vase as a vessel when I have the capacity of a teacup, right? And so, where I am and where I'm trying to get anyone listening and who find yourself in this place to understand is, just be the teacup. If you have the capacity of the teacup, allow yourself, match this energy. Sometimes we don't match this energy of the teacup season because we fear that our giant is gone. That giant is not gone, honey. It's not. It's not. You just don't need to use all of your strength in this season. There are some people that can support you, your friends, your family, as long as you are allowing them to also see you as this teacup. See, we might also have the tendency, not only will I continue to see myself as this big giant vase, I will allow others to see me as this big giant vase wearing a mask. And so when people keep trying to pour into me, or ask me and they expect me to pour out of this container, this vessel that is so big and large, when all I have the capacity for is this tiny teacup. And I'm getting frustrated with them. And I'm saying, nobody wants to help me. Nobody understands what I'm going through. No, but if I am walking around acting like I have the capacity to pour out like this big vase, people are going to still expect that. So I welcome you to give yourself permission. Just be the teacup, babes. Because the season will return where that giant isn't sleeping. It wasn't sleeping so many times last year. So much of last year, this the vase. This I was the vase. I was the big giant vase being poured into by so many people, people that I had just met. It was amazing. That season of my life was all that God had called it to be. And then so quickly, almost overnight, literally, I became a teacup and I had no idea what to do with that capacity. So I started to use the tools that I teach and the tools that I have, and then my community and my own support system to work through that. And it is a process when you have operated as a vase, knowing good and well you was a teacup in the seasons. This ain't the first season. You've been in teacup season operating as a vase. I digress. If you're listening and you're in a season where your bandwidth is smaller, where things that used to roll off now land heavier, right? When you're moving slower than you're used to, where that strategy is not strategizing, the pieces aren't coming together, it doesn't mean you're less capable. It means that your capacity has shifted. Your strength is still intact. You are still the giant. I want you to sit with one question this week. What shape am I right now? When I posted that Substack and the socials, so many people responded to that and understood the analogy of this vase in this teacup. And I'm guessing because you've been in either or season, either the vase or the teacup or both, or you've gone in and out, and maybe you figured out how to flow in and out these seasons. Um, but if you haven't, I want you to ask yourself a question. What shape am I right now? Not what shape should I be? Do I want to be? Where was I before? What shape are you actually in? What would it look like if I just honored that instead of fighting it? What would that look like? I don't have a word for 2026 yet. And that's intentional. I need to take some time to sit with myself, and I encourage anybody who finds yourself with different capacity in your business, in your family, in any of the roles that you take on. Take a minute to sit with yourself, asking yourself some questions. What do you have the capacity for in this season? Your word will shape shift with you. The word vessel was on my heart for a reason, and it shape shifted with me. And I've learned so much about myself, about what our mental health looks like when we shapeshift. Um, And so I want to take some time to sit with it. And honestly, I want to do it with each of you. I'd love to know what your words are and share mine with you. If this metaphor is landing and you want to read the full reflection, of course, you can go find it on Substack. It'll be there. But starting this season, the audio of the podcast is going to live on Spotify. But if you want the full visual experience, if you want to see me holding the vase and the teacup, the pauses, the energy, the presence, come find me on YouTube where the videos will live. I'm also in the process of opening a work based stress and burnout therapy group. It is not live yet. It will be live at the beginning of March, and that is on purpose. It will be built with care. But let's end our podcast. Jeez, we have not been going that long. That's crazy. Oh, maybe it's gonna be short. But also in 2026, we're going to continue to end every podcast with a Brown Heart Mindful moment. So get ready to take a breath with me. Closing your eyes if that feels good to you. Y'all already know if you're driving, don't do it. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. Saying to yourself, I am allowed to take the shape that keeps me safe. I am allowed to take the shape that keeps me safe in this season. Take another big deep breath. Exhale. Thank you so much for being here. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need permission to stop proving, stop honoring. Share if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need permission to stop proving. Like, stop trying to be the vase. Stop trying to be a big, huge vessel if that's not where you are in this season, and that's okay. Start honoring where you are and watch your nervous system grow to feel safe in that. Now, let me tell you, it's not going to be easy, okay? Because my nervous system has been like, girl, what is happening? But yeah, start honoring where you are. Um, I will see you all next time. Please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts about today's episode. Take care of yourself. See you.